There you go.
Here we go. At last, I managed to solve the problem. We're starting with the problem, guys. That's good for the association, guys. So, welcome to a view to this new idea of mine. I have more ideas on top of my head than I have sadly, guys. Tell you, I think we're on the same level, guys. I mean, especially you and Rick. And we're kidding inside. This is just very first trial of something that I've been having in mind for a long time. So casting light on the crossing point between blockchain and sustainability, ESG related topics. So since the joining by BoB, the association as a consultant for sustainability, and have a strategy, I thought about going for regular meeting with him, highlighting a few points, touching on a few topic points. So, Bob, welcome to this new format. Hopefully, this is going to be insightful for the listeners. We'll be recording this. We'll be sharing this on. I'll be sharing actually this on DSA Europe and on my personal profile to reach out to the most people as possible within my own network to make a big impact, well, at least as big as possible. Bob, I'll leave it on to you to start. I mean, to kick this off and give us your feeling about your activity and what you think of blockchain, digitalization in general, sustainability.
Ooh, that's a big question, Andrea, and it's a very difficult one in general. I see blockchain really as bringing value. It's bringing a value of a framework, basically. And you have actually different value or needs which currently companies are dealing with. One of them could be dealing with transparency and trust. And blockchain is a fantastic technology which can provide you and have insights and support that. It also helps with data sharing. And the moment you talk more about data sharing, that means also you can introduce much more optimization in your own internal processes as an organization. Then think about there's more clarity on auditability, compliance. You could even do payments. The data management is much more clear. You have clear data security. So it is a fantastic tool or technology to be able to use it in many different value drivers in that perspective. And if you think about the supply chain, that is a very difficult topic in general. There are many different players and actors present, and actually it can create a trust to the whole environment, creates the transparency, helps you with means of data sharing, and with that basically creating much more resilient supply chains. But it's actually something people are really looking forward to really make that much more happening currently.
Yeah, it's on everybody's lips, especially these days, by the way. I agree with you. Where are we now, actually? Because I've been hearing about so many projects about traceability, about digitalization of trade, about digitalization of supply chain. We have to admit that the last 3/4 years has been a lot of buzzword around blockchain technology.
Yeah, yeah.
Where are we nowadays in the building of the ecosystem, according to your opinion? I'll give you mine, but let's go first. I mean,
no. You kick off. You kick off, and I'm very curious actually what your views are.
I want to be provocative. I want to provoke. I think we come into a standpoint. Weird still, actually. And I'll tell you very honestly, I'm pretty disappointed with what's going on. And I'll tell you why later on I will modify this. You said it perfectly, transparency. I would add inclusivity and inclusion. Are we really there at that point? Because we have to admit, supply chain is a hell. Think about how many actors. It's a living hell. You remember, by the way, Boston Consulting Group, that diagram, that drawing. You remember so many connections. That's a single transaction. So you have to level up to the same level. So many actors with the whole chain. Did we really manage in the last few years to do that? My feeling is no. whether it's a sort of reluctance by stakeholders to go digital, or whether maybe the solution being devised is not really harmonic, inclusive, seamless. So affordable to you, by the way, Bob, to
No,
give
no, no.
more substance into this.
I completely get your point of view, and I agree with it, because what you really see is there's been a huge focus on digitization, basically make the paper documents into some kind of digital format. That is basically the main focus currently. But it started already 70 years ago with EDI. And EDI is not being accepted or used to create all of this transparency, this create data sharing. So
I think we
there
touched
must
on
be
this
another
point.
issue as well.
Enrique, I think we touched on this specific point, by the way, with the EDI recently. Also, we put black on white on the social media, by the way, recently about this. And I share an opinion with Jesus Herencia, one of our friends. So go ahead. Sorry, didn't want to interrupt you, but definitely I agree with you.
So that is one thing. And then, of course, there's so many rules and regulations currently. We still require the paper, a wet signature, and a stamp on it. And that's through the whole supply chain. That doesn't really help and make things really change as well. Then, of course, there are initiatives, if you think about the bill of lading, to have a digital format of it, and then they create some kind of closed environment with their own rule book, etc. So that actually makes things more achievable, but it's a closed environment because everybody has to agree on it. And when the moment you go outside of that region or outside of the boundary, you come into issues and you have to go back to paper. So there's a huge issue. And I don't think you really quickly solve that. What you otherwise see is also with blockchain being used in supply chain. It's one of the use cases which has been depicted from the beginning. People are really hardly working on, and also related with supply chain finance, but even more trade finance, especially also the process related with letter of credit, which is also still paper based. So if you see also the hype cycles, which Gartner normally say in the beginning, you just could basically barely spell blockchain and you got a lot of money. I think that is completely over. People are not really interested in the technology anymore. It's more like what value can you bring, and value to the different organizations, but even more to the ecosystem. So that's also a completely different way of thinking. If you use this technology, you have to lose the way of thinking which you traditionally are being met with. Examples is that you actually see two initiatives based on blockchain which lately have been going to the grave almost, if you would use that word. It is WeTrade, which was focusing on financing, and that was basically mainly by a consortium of banks. So that's quite limited. And if a user, you should have an account with one of these banks, and your counterparty should be using one of the banks in the same consortium. Otherwise, you could not use the platform. So that's a bit of a limitation. The other one currently, which came into the news yesterday, actually is TradeLens, which is focusing a lot on the shipping lines. And there could be several reasons why that failed. I don't have all the insights, but it became clear that it's not really commercially viable in that perspective. But again, that was also a quite closed environment. And that closed environment gives me still of a feeling of centralized control.
Approach.
While if you think about blockchain,
it's
much more decentralized. And it starts with the basic layer, the stack, the protocol, basically, which is completely decentralized. And everything you do on top of it, you should think completely different governance and the business model and the applications you put on top of it. And if you would like to centralize it again, it might not be the best solution for it. And therefore the mindset, I think, became the biggest issue.
Provocative, Bob. You mentioned blockchain. There is a sort of diatribe here in it, especially about blockchain and differences with DLTs, distributed ledger technology, about distribution, about decentralization. I have a gut feeling that we talk about two different things. One thing is blockchain, and the other thing is DLT. So what's being done nowadays is DLT based, meaning that what is the real value that we commonly focus on in Web3, especially. Because you think about an e-bill of lading, we usually have the mind frame that this is a logistic document, this is a shipping document. Is it really so? No, it's not like that. It's, let's say, collateral. It's document being used in financial transactions as well. So that's rather something else. So I agree with you. Maybe it's rather, let's go for a revolution instead of going for an evolution. Remember what we discussed about? Seriously,
Yeah,
you have a new technology and you're trying to force the hand of God by reframing it into old models. Maybe it's time for new models, for new business models. What do you think?
yeah, I completely agree. That's why I mentioned, like, if you think about the underlying technology, it's completely decentralized. And that means the protocol is centralized and you have to think completely different on top of it. And on top of it, you have basically what you could call the digital asset layer. There you can create the tokenization possibilities. And that creates the opportunity, anything which is physical as an asset, you can make it as a digital asset and you can create ownership related to it. And on top of it, you can create all kinds of applications on it with that, for instance, payments, finance, etc. If you think about the supply chain again, and especially if you refer to the bill of lading, in a way, it's a contract to ship goods from A to B. But for the ocean bill of lading, there's this other topic related to what you just mentioned. It's also this ownership, and therefore you can use it as collateral. Well, with tokenization, bang, this is your bill of lading. Why do you have a digital document for it? Because you can still say this is a smart contract with and tokenize with it. This is basically depicting very clearly you are shipping for me goods from A to B, and once you have done it, great. But in the meantime, you're the owner or somebody else is the owner, and that still can be used as collateral for
It's
anything.
like
There's still a value
hijacking.
exchange.
It's like a hijacking the potential of technology. If you try again to reframe innovation into old models, we're talking about industries. We don't have to deny this. We have highlighted this during our meetings on a regular basis. We have to deal with an industry that is millennia old. And look, we're utilizing the same documents that were used here some kind of 6 centuries ago to transport goods from a municipality to another one. Okay, we're utilizing ships, we're utilizing cargo containers, ocean cargo containers. Okay, it's different, I understand. But the core problem is that you have this very old way of doing things and so many actors in the middle. Think about doing things in a different way.
I can
And,
give you
and
many
I
examples on that perspective how I see
please
upon it.
please do
And we
please
just
do.
touched upon the bill of lading. Another one would be actually all the papers which are part of the supply chain are just a representation of something happening at a certain moment in the supply chain. So a warehouse receipt, it states that the goods are in the warehouse. So it's basically a status there in the warehouse. You can actually say like, oh, if you have a physical asset, your goods, you make a digital asset of it, basically with tokenization. And with the help of tokenization, you can follow the whole route and just each of the different inflection points, you can say, okay, this is the different status. This is a different owner, maybe even, which is related to it. And with that, you can relate all kinds of contracts which are dealing together with this token. The same as with elements to give more insight where it actually originates from. So you have provenance. You have elements of possibility of related sustainability data to it, the E, the S, or the G. So you have provenance from beginning to end for the end consumer as well. And with that, you can get more insights. So if you would do now a logical transaction, it starts, of course, with a purchase order, a sales order. I sell you something, Andrea, and then it has to be shipped, in this case, maybe from the Netherlands to Italy.
To Italy.
Yeah, we can do that nicely by road, by train, by air. Okay, say we do it by water. So you still have different means of transportation, most likely. So you have different participants involved. And all of them you basically can relate different contracts with for the same goods. And at the moment, actually, we know that it arrived in Italy, and maybe based on the Incoterms, that means like, okay, if we followed actually the vessel itself using AIS, I know exactly when it arrives in the port. If there is actually
Absolutely.
an IoT device on the container, most likely when it is on the dock itself or on the quay, it will receive again from the GSM network. That is for me actually an extra signal that it actually is on the quay. If you would have then the next thing is maybe a custom clearance, is another a point of
This is
proof.
what is
That
called
gives me already 3 points
transparency.
of truth that it's actually arrived in Italy. And that would say like I already have been having done all my commitments related to the contract we made, and I can get paid. And that could be done automatically because you
One
can do
provocation, by the way.
the Swift
One
automatically.
question to raise. You know that most of international global trade is basically based transactions. I mean, financial transactions are based on independence, which means you have a double layer. You see operations on the bottom, upper it comes financial side of the transactions. Each of them run in parallel, but they don't never cross points. And this is right because I would me that let's say the buyer could tell, hey, you haven't accomplished all of your duties under the contract. We're already mentioning contract under a documentary credit, it's really wrong because you should be mentioning application, if you know what I mean. And block the payment if these two things would cross. This way, payments goes, let's say, automatically upon documents. But again, in the underline, you have the operativity. You have a whole new set of tools nowadays to bring all the data instead of documents from the real world into the digital one without interfering into the basics of the global trade, which is independence. So you can capture a set of data, which is absolutely massive. You can capture data related to emissions, you can capture data related to temperature. So if any of this data could be useful for your own transaction, you can use it. Why not to leverage on the operational side on this massive set of data? You can eventually leverage on those data, and you know what I'm talking about, to originate transactions. Think about sustainable frameworks, sustainable standards for trade and trade funds. ICC is on that. This morning I just quoted, by the way, something related to this document released by the ICC, general ICC. So, I mean, let's think about it. You mentioned it. What's the need of going through a traditional process? This really think, well, could potentially be something really innovative. Eric, don't hesitate to give us your opinion into this. By the way, you're an expert into supply chain. So if ever you have some ideas, please, some insights, please share them with us.
I mean, you guys are on an absolute roll. There's so many different processes that we can improve upon. You know, you started off just discussing bills of lading and documentation. You know, why in 2022 do we still need to rely on physical pieces of paper? We've had the internet, we've had EDI for a long time. So what's the actual bottleneck, right? The actual bottleneck is change management.
No more EDI.
Yeah. I mean, it's a change management. It's people that are reluctant to make some changes in their process. Yes, I agree that supply chains are absolutely complex and there are a lot of different moving parts. But in 2022, again, almost 2023, we need to look at things differently and change those processes. Beautiful things that that evolved from this Walmart Canada example that we always speak about here, especially in my country, is that it changed the invoicing process, right? Something that was simple and general from a invoicing process. You pick up the goods, you carry the goods, you deliver the goods, you invoice for your services. Using blockchain, that was turned around completely, right? That first process had its problems, where your dispute mechanism was after the fact, which created its own problems. But by using a DLT, your invoicing process began at another point in time. Your dispute mechanism happened at another point in time, which eliminated those problems. So just reviewing, revising the way we do things on a daily basis is very powerful. Technology is a part of that, but the mindset is where I think that we need to focus.
Indeed, because what you see is currently you see a lot of old wine being put in some kind of new container. And it looks all shiny and new, but we do the same thing. So it doesn't really make any difference. And there's a huge focus on digitization, which in my opinion is the first step, because then you have digitalization, and you really start using it. And the third is really the digital transformation. And then you do something much more revolutionizing, as you mentioned, Andrea. And the invoice, what you mentioned, Eric, is a good example, because approximately 80 to 90%, that was also the paper of BGG together with Swift, I think, that information is already present in the purchase order, and it's just being passed on, passed on, passed on, passed on. And just a few little extra items are there. So basically a lot of information you can already transport over the whole supply chain, and people are anticipating it. And with the help of data sharing gives more insights and actually more opportunities to smoothen the whole process. So if Andrea knows, like, okay, Bob, your ship comes actually Friday, I know that then I can already have a driver most likely on Friday also present to pick up this container and my goods, because then I can continue with it unless I get a notification from the customs that they have to check it and the process becomes longer. Now you get it always afterwards, because you receive some kind of papers and you hear, oh, now your goods are there. So it's a very slow process, a lot of delays. And also because of that, the transparency is a whole new business model for most of the players currently as well. But yeah, this new technology gives all kinds of opportunities to think differently and start, yeah, making completely new descriptions of how you can deal actually with the supply chain, and to create much more benefit out of it instead of a hassle, because now there are so many people involved just looking in the operations and be dealing with it, while there's a waste of a lot of effort which you can put much more into value by helping your client much better and give the best services.
Bob, I know it's not exactly the same thing. Think about under a B2C perspective and a B2B perspective. Shifting towards B2C picture, you see the giant tech, how they do operate. It's a very seamless, straightforward approach, both in logistics, payments, all integrated, all embedded into one solution. I think I might be wrong. I mean, I'm not an expert. I'm far from being an expert, but the model that I have in mind, I think B2B models of the future should be targeting the same model as B2C. It's different, I know, because you have legislation that are pretty different compared to each other. But that should be the model to follow soon. What do you think? And I mean, we ran out of time, so just
no, your experience, how you perceive it, at least from a B2C, from a business towards a client. Yeah, we have so many tools there. You can follow all your goods online. You can choose when you want to have it delivered and change it. You can do your payments anywhere in the process. If you book a flight, you can actually rent a car and a hotel. So it's all intertwined, and you can arrange it from one portal, so to say. If you're from business to business, you have to have this and then that system, blah, blah. Of course, that has to be changed. But to say that that has to be copied in. I don't really agree with it because it's still one part of the whole same stream. So you should focus really on the end consumer and have the whole process basically being the same way. There is no distinction between them.
I think we cast light on something that we should dig out for maybe during the next session early in 2023, guys. And by the way, I kick this fold them to this very first, let's say, BSCA's Big Impact session. And thank both of you for joining me, by the way, today. It was a great chat. The very first one that I hope to be the first of many to come. And we touched on a few points that we should be taking out for in the future. So I thank both of you.
So I hope when it's being posted, let people have some questions or remarks that it actually also comes all kinds of input for this discussion as well. So I'm looking forward actually to the responses of the public.
More interaction will bring to innovation, hopefully, and will be at the center of it. This is what we would love to be. We're an association, so we're agnostic. So we do need people's input. We need experts' input. You, by crossing pathway, you find the right solution, the right way to go through to be successful. So guys, see you very soon again, and have a lovely evening, both of you, Eric. Thanks for being with us today, and hopefully you've gone to join us again and again in this adventure. See you really soon. Bye, gentlemen. Ciao, Bob.
Ciao.
Ciao.